I'd like to introduce Mayor Corey Woods.
Thank you, Chief Glass. So I'm going to probably just reiterate some of the comments I've made this morning in several media interviews. This is still clearly a very fluid situation right now. We will continue to release information to the public as we have it. But the current thing that I'm trying to let people know is that, first of all, whenever I get up in the morning and something like this happens, the first thing you wonder about, is there any loss of life? And the fact is, so far, we've been able to report that there has been no loss of life at the scene, and that is the thing that most people who've reached out to me about this have asked a question about. So I just want to make sure that we reiterate that in front of all these cameras. The other thing is I would just try to tell the people of the city of Tempe who either live here or work here, please make sure you allow the crews to do their jobs. We've got Tempe Fire Medical Rescue, Tempe Police Department, and several other municipalities who've also offered their services during this time. So the biggest thing I would try to tell people is we need to let the crews down there do their jobs, do the investigation, and do the cleanup with minimal interference or no interference. So if people could stay away from that area for a further notice, that would be optimal. Clearly, from a traffic standpoint, you're not going to be able to get through anyway, but we just want to make sure that there isn't interference. We want to make sure that residents aren't out or even the media flying drones over the area. That airspace needs to be clear so our public safety workers can do their jobs. And so that is my main message to everyone today and to the residents of the city of Tempe. Stay away from the area until further notice. We've got a bunch of dedicated people from the city of Tempe and beyond working on the situation, and I've got full confidence that we are going to find out exactly what happened, and we're going to continue to get the job done. So with that, I'll take any questions, or I can turn it over. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to now introduce Chief Reese from Tempe Fire Medical Rescue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. And thank you for accommodating us today. It's been, as you can imagine, an extremely busy day for not only Tempe Fire Medical Rescue and Tempe Police Department, but all of our partners in public safety, as well as the agencies that we will be partnering with over the next several months as we work towards a remedy for what has occurred this morning. I'm going to read to you some of the timeline because I have been engaged in the activity since the early morning hours and obviously engaged in supporting our crews out there and working. I was not watching my clock closely. So I'm going to run through how things developed today and where we are currently. At 6:09 this morning, Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department was dispatched for a train fire with reports of a possible train derailment at the location of Farmer and University. On arrival, crews confirmed there was a train derailment with partial collapse of the bridge and active fire to multiple train cars. At 6:16 this morning, a first alarm hazardous assignment was called for the assignment, and based on some of the findings that they had, the initial crews had. Crews from Tempe Fire Medical Rescue, Phoenix Fire, Scottsdale Fire, Mesa Fire, Medical, Chandler Fire responded to assist in the firefighting activities and continue to work on the scene diligently to address the hazards that still remain. At 6:44, a second alarm was dispatched, a third alarm was called at 7:05, and the event went as high as a fourth alarm, which was called at 11:05. In our world, that is a very, very large event. The focus of the initial operation was to contain the fire and keep it from spreading to additional cars. The fire has been knocked down, and the crews continue to address any hot spots along the bridge. We were able to utilize a fireboat through the automatic aid system with the help of Peoria Fire Department. I made a call earlier this morning to Peoria's fire chief, asked if they could deploy their fireboat. We are in an automatic aid system, and the city of Peoria, through the fire chief, quickly answered my call, and they deployed their asset from Lake Pleasant, and we had it in the water, and it has done some amazing work for us. The focus of the operation now is to contain a hazardous material leak from one of the cars. The hazardous material leaking is cyclohexane, which is a flammable liquid. It is used to produce other chemicals and solvents. The leak is not going into the Tempe Town Lake itself. Crews are continuing to work with the regional partners and Union Pacific to address the leak, and we do not have a time frame for the resolution of the leak at this time. The Arizona Department of Environmental Quality did monitor the air early on and throughout this event and found no imminent hazard at that time, and they continue to monitor, and they do not have any hazards that is in the air for the public. I was asked early on if the smoke is toxic. Smoke is toxic, period. If people are in smoke, we would ask them to move out of the smoke into clean air. But there is no hazard that has been identified through our monitoring other than the products that we find of normal combustion. We have received several questions, and our PIO, Chief Glass, has received several questions, and she asked me to address or answer where we are with them. One of the questions is concerning a possible derailment from June 26th. I say possible as this investigation was conducted by the Union Pacific, and all questions about the result of the investigation should be referred to Union Pacific for their comment. Tempe Fire and Medical Rescue did respond to the same area of Rio Salado and Salt River with along the Union Pacific Bridge and had put out a fire that occurred with the rail ties. No rail cars were on fire during that event. We have also been receiving significant amount of inquiries concerning the water quality and possible impacts. We are working with multiple partners on the local, county, state, and federal level to ensure the water and all additional environmental concerns are addressed as the situation continues to develop. We do not have the specific information on any results of immediate impacts or any time frame. I will now turn it over to Chief Moyer.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. The police department role in this kind of an incident is to support the men and women of Tempe Fire Medical Rescue and also to ensure public safety. Upon being alerted to this event, we had a rapid and coordinated response. Our chief goal was to isolate, evacuate if necessary, and to support Tempe Fire Medical Rescue. At this time, the Tempe Police Department is conducting operations to isolate folks from this event. It's commonly known as traffic control and pedestrian control so that we don't have folks entering an active scene. Throughout this event, we conduct operations, planning, intelligence gathering, and the other associated activities with an event of this significance. We really have to say that this kind of an event, an incident that occurs in this part of Arizona, is one where you will see patches from all over the valley. ASU, Chandler, a number of agencies came to support us, to help, and to lend whatever aid they could offer. And early on in this event, we reached out to our partners in the federal government, primarily the Phoenix office of the FBI. And you might wonder why we did that. We did that for a number of reasons. One is that we enjoy a very positive relationship with our federal partners. And if anything were to occur in this incident that would give rise to an investigation, we had our detectives and the FBI side by side so that we were ready if this evolved into a criminal investigation of any kind. We would have the resources, the assets, and the talent on ground side by side conducting the investigation. So our role is public safety. Our role is to support the incredible work that is done by Tempe Fire Medical Rescue, and we will continue to do that throughout this incident. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions of Mayor Woods here, myself, or the police chief?
In regard to the structural integrity of the bridge, on June 26th, there was a derailment. Were you aware of this, and was this any cause to the derailment today?
Sure, I'm going to keep this on just for expedience. We were alerted to the derailment. That is completely the domain of Union Pacific Railroad. The police department response was to ensure that the folks that were assessing, mitigating, and recovering from that derailment were doing so in a safe way, and that no citizens of Tempe or anyone that was traveling around that area would be compromised so they could get their work done. At that time, there was no reason for us to involve ourselves further.
Is there any agency that goes back after Union Pacific does its mitigation to make sure that it's safe to traverse over there?
So I'm not clear on the efforts that are taken in that way to ensure structural integrity, but I'm confident that Union Pacific Railroad could answer that for you.
This is for whoever really wants
Sure.
to field it. It's an infrastructure question in terms of the damage that was done and the closures that are going on. Do we anticipate these being multi-day closures to the lake, to these roads, and are there repairs that have to be made?
Sure. The question is really about infrastructure and how long it will take. While this is not my domain, I have listened to folks and heard from folks that say this will be a multi-day, even perhaps a multi-week effort.
To fix all of this and get downtown?
Our understanding is that for this structure, it will take quite some time to have structural integrity and open it up for folks to travel freely. Same for the lake. We take it very seriously, the conditions of our beautiful Tempe Town Lake, and we want to ensure that it is safe for folks to enjoy. So that will take some time.
Chief, you mentioned the fact that you involved the FBI. I imagine there are cameras around this area. Do you have any reason to believe foul play was involved? Why involve the FBI?
So we involve the FBI because of a few things. One is that they are talented professionals in this type of an investigation should something give rise to an understanding that there may be a criminal element. Also because they are trusted partners and we wanted them on the ground early. So we call our partners so that we are all together from the early stages of any kind of examination or investigation. So there was nothing that gave rise early on for us to believe that there was going to be something criminal, but the smart practices in investigations are to involve our partners early, and we did just that.
And still nothing, I mean, I know it's 6 a.m. to now, but any new developments, any video that has led you to believe criminal or rule that out?
So there's a tenacious scouring occurring right now, and nothing has come to light at this point that I could reveal clearly to tell you that we're headed in any specific direction.
Could Chief Reese talk more about the hazardous leak? Early on, Union Pacific said that there was no leak going on, and you mentioned that it's not going into the water,
Yeah.
and it doesn't appear to be hazardous in the air. Can you elaborate on that leak?
Yeah, it is a liquid, and there is a leak that when I left the scene about 2 hours ago, they were still working to contain that leak. It is a car that is part of the derailment, or the cars that derailed. There are multiple cars that derailed, multiple liquid containers or containers that would transport a liquid, either pressurized or non-pressurized, and there was 2 grain cars that were all part of the collapse. One that I know for sure is the cyclohexane. I know that as to be confirmed. There are others that were identified throughout, but I can't be specific on what actually came off the track except the cyclohexane, because that is the leak they are working on. It is a coordinated effort that is going on. We have identified where that leak is going. It is actually not going into the waterway. It is being dumped into a dry bed area. So the cleanup will be not from a environmentally in the water. It'll be a cleanup to wherever. And I'm not the expert that knows how to clean that up or anything, but I did confirm that it was going into a dry bed.
What is cyclohexane?
Yeah, it is, as I said earlier, most of these chemicals are chemicals that are being transported in bulk, and they're part of other processes. I believe it is part of almost like a thinner, paint thinner. And I was also told at the EOC that it's used to make some solid products, some of your poly products, your PVCs and stuff. I'm not an expert on that, but that is what I was informed.
Would the mayor like to share his thoughts on the idea that there was a previous derailment and then there was an inspection earlier this month, and now we have this big disaster? You just got in office. Is there, what are your concerns? Is there anything that the city can do to make sure this doesn't happen again, or make sure that this area stays safe?
So the conversations about the previous derailment apparently happened before I took office as mayor, so I'm still kind of actively learning about that. And as a matter of fact, I only heard about that earlier this morning once this incident took place. So I definitely can't speak to the veracity of that claim at this point. I really would have to spend some more time talking to folks at Union Pacific and speaking with our staff as well to find out more about that previous derailment that you're talking about.
Mayor, is Union Pacific, do they have a team here
I have not personally had any communication with them. It's very possible that our city staff or Chief Reese has, but I'll turn it over to him.
I was going to say, yes, there is, down at the scene, I have been truly impressed with the response, not only with our automatic aid partners, but, and all of our partners, but the federal agencies that are down there. Union Pacific is well represented, as well as many other agencies. And this is, as Chief Moyer said, I don't have a timeline, but there are a lot of agencies that have come into town. People that have flown here, traveled from California, et cetera, from the people that I've come across there. So this is going to be a large team effort, and it is going to be, I've referred to it as a campaign event. Though we will mitigate the fire and control this leak, this is going to be a campaign event for us as a city and as the agencies that are involved in trying to remedy this and get everything back operational.
Obviously, we have a lot of questions about this June 26th event. Any reason why they aren't here at this press conference? Were they invited to be here?
So we did invite Union Pacific to be here, and unfortunately, they have a lot of resources that are down at the scene who need to be there for the active scene. Their PIOs, we did use that information in the media alert so that you have that contact information directly and can contact them to get additional answers in regard to any previous investigations and the current one moving forward. So that's why we did include that in the media alert so that you have that direct connection. They were unable. They do have people who are coming from out of state to assist more with the media side, and that's why they're not here today. So the folks that are actually at the scene are needing to be there for investigative purposes and to assist with the continuation of the scene. For media perspective, you do have that content information that you can coordinate with, and they can provide additional information on the June 26th incident and any other questions that you might have moving forward. But we did reach out. They did want to be here, but they are traversing from out of state, and COVID obviously makes things a little bit harder, so.
Can you briefly describe what happened during that incident on the 26th? What scale was that at, or what happened?
When, in comparison to this one, it was actually a very minor incident when it comes to what was involved, what was damaged. There was a very small section of rail ties that were on fire that were quickly put out. Some slight damage to the bridge itself from what we could see, and then the investigation was turned over to Union Pacific.
I want to speak to that a little bit because we've been told by like the Federal Railroad Administration that basically these inspections are not public record and that basically Union Pacific polices itself, and I think even Tempe has to request the records from the railroad companies. You know, in light of this incident, are you guys going to try and, I guess, monitor Union Pacific more? Because now we have a damaged bridge, and at least in this case, no one was injured, but we could be looking at a very different scenario, and no one is really watchdogging them.
I think that's going to come down to the regulations and what are in place that we need to look at further. If there's certain parameters in place that we don't have control over, that's something that we can look into, but I don't have a direct answer that will immediately proceed forward. It is something that can be looked at, but we have to follow the federal guidelines, the state guidelines, and as do everybody else.
And Mayor, a lot of people are wondering, I mean, this bridge has been around since before the 1930s. It's an iconic piece of, you know, Tempe's history right there on the lake. People are going to wonder if this is going to be rebuilt and if Union Pacific is going to pay for it. How are you thinking about this moving forward?
Well, I mean, clearly the fact that the bridge was actually being utilized, I would think that they would probably want to rebuild it. But at the same time, I'm not a Union Pacific representative, and so I can't speak to what they're going to choose to do. But it clearly wasn't a bridge that was inactive. It was currently being utilized. So I would think they're going to probably take a very hard look at rebuilding it so it can continue to be used. But you'd have to ask them just to get a full confirmation.
And then I imagine this is a massive bill. Is Union Pacific going to foot it?
I would assume so, but we're going to have a conversation about that. I mean, clearly, given the fact that it is their property, I would imagine that they probably will. But once again, we'll be having those conversations, myself and all the folks standing up here and City Manager Andrew Ching, and we'll find out.
Mayor, just one other.
Yes.
Does this affect any of the light rail traffic going across?
So the light rail is currently shut down because of what happened this morning. So yes, so no light rail. I know the 202 is still shut down as well. So I know it definitely has impacted traffic and rail service, and that will probably continue until we're convinced that it's safe enough for those services to resume.
Okay, do we have any additional questions for any of our chief officers or the mayor today?
I mean, on the drive over, I saw them still putting the water down on these hot spots. How long do you anticipate your men having to be out there, and are you taking shifts? I mean, I imagine people have been in the heat, 150-degree heat for a while.
Yeah, so it went out at, I'm sorry, it went out at 6:09 this morning. We shift change at 8 o'clock. The initial crews that were going off shift did work for quite a while, but we got the oncoming crews out there. Part of the decision to go to a fourth alarm, once we got all the resources in place to operate, part of the reason to go to greater alarms is to bring more workforce out to ensure that we are rotating our workers through, because they are in full PPE in those conditions out there. So we wanted to rotate them, make sure they're hydrated, cooling. We've even released crews that have been there for a period of time. It will continue to smolder for a while. When you look at some of the train cars, they were carrying bulk wood. It's very dense. It's going to burn for a while. We're going to continue to put water on it, but it's really hard to get into the center of those piles of lumber, especially elevated in the that is, given the scenario that we have. They're out over the lake still. Again, we utilize that fireboat, but getting deep penetration into the bulk of that wood is going to be a challenge.
Two questions. I know you said there were no injuries. Was there somebody on the train, and how did they get out unscathed?
So my understanding in listening to the briefs over there, and again, I'm not expert in the rail system and what was going on. I was told there were 95 cars that were transferring across there, obviously not all at the same time, but there were 95 cars connected to that. And so you can imagine, I don't know operationally where everybody is, but we're very fortunate, as the mayor started off with, that nobody was hurt. You may hear, or you may have heard, we did transport one firefighter to the hospital for dehydration. He's fine, and he's been released as of now, but as the mayor said, this is a very, 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 it was a very dangerous event, continues to be, and if we get through this continuing to that being our only injury or our only illness, then hey, that's A-okay for me as the fire chief.
Yeah, do you know how many people were on the train now from Union Pacific?
I do not. That's why I mean 95 cars. I don't know what it takes to pull 95 cars full.
And are you guys pulling water from Tempe Town Lake?
No, we do not suction from Town Lake. We are pulling all of our water through our hydrant system. We have had no issues with the water system at all. Again, we work closely with our water department, and we recently became a Class 1 fire department, which is a testament to our water, to our public works and what they do with our water, and it proved it today.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.